Well, here we are, and I need to talk to the third grade because I understand some of you are having some trouble understanding measurement. You know, measurement is one of those things that you learn in math that you absolutely are going to use all the time in your life. Whether you're measuring ingredients for recipes or you're measuring a piece of fabric to sew something, or if you're measuring a piece of wood because you're building something. We measure so many things. We measure the temperature. We measure how tall we are. We measure what size shoes we wear. So let's talk about measurement a little bit. The lessons 10.6, 10.7, and 10.8 in your math book, first of all, addresses measurements of length, and then it talks about measurements of liquid, and then it talks about measurements of mass. Now don't let the word mass confuse you. As you get a little further along in science, it'll take on its own special meaning, but when they talk about mass, they're talking about how much something weighs. It's weight. So we've got weight, we've got liquid measurements, and we've got length measurements. Now there are two standard units of measurement that we use, and that's the American Standard one and the European metric one. So they're two different things. Metric is used almost exclusively all over the world anymore, except for the United States, and we just seem to cling to this different standard of measurement. But it's not all that complicated. On page 593, the first thing they show you is a ruler. And, you know, it's like anything else. If you don't put one in your hands, if you don't look at it, if you don't try to figure out what it is, then it's just air bubbles in your head. You got to look at it. And you got to recognize that all along this ruler are numbers. And rulers in the United States run in increments of 1 inch. 36 of those is equal to 1 yard. And we use that measurement all the time. Plumbers, carpenters, steel workers, everybody that builds things uses a ruler to measure things, because when you build something, if you can't measure it to a certain specification, then your houses would all be cockeyed and leaning over, and it'd be all kinds of crazy. And don't think that you won't be building something one of these days. And then you have to measure it and cut it and figure that all out, and it's not that hard. So I don't understand why it's so confusing to you. Get a ruler. Everybody has a ruler. And the nice thing about these little 1-foot rulers that we all carry around with us in school is it's not only broken in inches, but it's also in the metric system in centimeters. So depending on what you're measuring, if you need to measure it in inches, you got inches. If you need to measure it in centimeters, you got centimeters. Now, when you measure something, and we're just going to put a something on the board, and that something is just going to be that line. I don't know how long that line is, but if somebody said, tell me how long that line is, Well, then I'd have to go measure it. Now, on every ruler, there's a line on the edge to the left of the 1. That's the line you put on the left side of the object. And if you don't know left from right, then we got a bigger problem. So you put that line on the left side of what you're going to measure, and then you go down the scale. 1 inch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, this one stops at 7 inches. So my line, which I've measured exactly, is 7 inches. Now, what if somebody said, I don't understand inches. I need to know how much length is in that line using centimeters. All right. So I take my other ruler that has centimeter measurement on it. And you see, there's a line over here on this edge too. You line that line right up on the left side of this. And then you go down to scale. Now, centimeters are smaller than inches. Matter of fact, it takes about 2.5 centimeters to be about the same length as an inch. So my number is going to be bigger. And as I go down the scale, I see my line ends right where it says 18. 18, and then we label it centimeters. Now, I don't know what's hard about that, unless you just don't want to look at a ruler and try and figure it out. Now, it gets a little more complicated when you look at a ruler, because not everything is exact. So on a ruler, and you'll see a nice illustration of this on the top of page 593, where the ruler starts, and that's 0. It doesn't say 0, by the way. You just got to know that it's 0. And then the first line is 1 inch. The second line is 2 inches, and so forth, all the way to 12, or if it's a yardstick, 36 inches. So each one of those is an inch. But an inch can be broken in half. This is where paying attention to fractions will help you. Because what is the definition of a fraction? It's a part of a whole. This is 1 whole inch. This is 1/2 of that inch. And 2 halves is equivalent to 1 whole. Now, they don't stop there, because sometimes measurements are even have to be more accurate than within 1/2 inch. So they split it again. Now, each one of these increments is 1/4 of an inch. And within 1 inch, there are 4 of them. Because 4/4 is equal to 1. So now you can measure something that is 7 1/4 inches long. Or you can measure it to be 7 1/2, 7 3/4, or it goes to the next whole number. But in their infinite wisdom, they actually took it even a little further than that. So here is our 1/2 measurements, Here is our 1/4 measurements. Let's go over to this one here. We've got our fourths. And what do? They split it in half again. So now the line gets a little smaller. And now if you count the spaces inside this inch, there are 8 spaces. And each one is 1/8 of an inch. And there are 8 of them because 8/8 equals 1 whole. So within an inch, you can have it broken into a 1/2 inch, into 4 equal 1/4 inches, or 8 equal 1/8 of an inch. And so if I had a line that went from 0 to right here, and it stopped right on that line, it would be 1 inch here plus the 1/8 here. It would equal 1 1/8. That would be the measurement. 1 plus 1/8. Now, let's just say I have a line that goes all the way to here. So here's my line. And I put my ruler on it, and I know that, well, this is 1 inch here, so from here to here is 1 inch. And then I have to look and see how many 8ths there are, because it stopped right on this line here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6/8. So we've got 1/8 here and 6/8 here. Again, depending on how well you paid attention during fractions, you know that the measurement isn't presented as 1 6/8 inches, because 6/8 can be reduced. And it reduces down to 3/4. You cut this in half, that's 3. You cut this in half, that's 4. 3/4. If you divide the numerator by 2, you got to divide the denominator by 2. That's all there is to it. That's how you measure length. So, within a ruler, you have measurements of inches, and you also have measurements of centimeters, depending if you're measuring it using the metric system or the standard system. In inches, every inch is broken into smaller pieces, and they represent a fraction of an inch. It can be broken into 2 pieces, which makes it a 1/2 an inch. It can be broken into 4 pieces, makes it 1/4 of that inch, or it can be broken into 8ths. And every ruler, every basic ruler that you will use, will be broken into increments down to 1/8 measurements. So that's measurement of length. Now, get yourself a ruler, look at the book, measure those things, get familiar with the markings that are on that ruler so that you know whether it's a 1/2 inch line, which is the longest line, the 1/4 inch line, which is a little bit smaller, or the 1/8 inch line, which is even smaller still. That's how you know it's eighths, quarters, and halves. Play with the ruler. Look at it. You can figure this out. I know you're smarter than the average piece of plastic. All right? Stay safe, get smart, stay out of trouble, and be kind to everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll talk about liquid measurement. And liquid is measured using liters and quarts. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Figure out the ruler for now, all right? Have your parents help you. They should know how to read a ruler. All right? See you, bye.